They said Earth was dead. Funny, I can still hear her heartbeat under the rubble. It's muffled now, slow like a dying drumbeat. But it's there, in the groaning of rusted steel under shifting concrete, in the wind that snakes through glassless skyscraper bones, in the static hum of a broken world trying to remember what it once was. I was born in the tunnels beneath what used to be Manhattan. My first cradle was a rusted ventilation duct. My lullaby was the creaking of support beams and the distant roar of collapsing things. No soft voices, no lullabies, just silence and the taste of iron. They call me Reeve, not because it means something, but because names help us pretend we're more than ghosts. The Vern took everything else, but they didn't take that. We gave each other names. We carved meaning from ash. And now, I think it's time they learned we're still here. The scout ship dropped from the clouds like a silver tumor, slicing through the ash-choked sky on a trail of white flame. I spotted it from the rooftop of an old banking tower. Those still standing now serve as watchposts, nesting grounds, sometimes graves. It shimmered like mercury as it descended, wings folding inward like a beetle preparing to bite. It's the first Vern ship we've seen in nearly 2 years. Last time one of those bastards came sniffing around, we lost 12 people and a whole generation of hydrogen crops. They sent drones, displacers, spider things that stitched up your mouth before you could scream. They weren't here to talk, but this time was different. This one came down slow, arrogant, like it thought we were finished. It landed in the Crater District, where Midtown used to be, right where the old subway veins split, halfway between Bone Market and the Cathedral of Rust. And that's where I decided we'd meet it. We moved at dusk. Shadows are better when you're trying to stay alive, and better still when you're hunting. My crew, 5 of us, draped in scavenged armor and boneplate. No uniforms, just layers of old World War gear mixed with New World desperation. Grit smeared into our skin, teeth blackened with soot. We moved like predators, silent, sure, angry. Dax was with me, hulking and growling with every step. 6.5 feet of muscle and mad laughter. Said he once broke a Vern drone in half with a rusted pipe. I believe him. Then there was Mora, dead-eye sniper with a tongue like broken glass. Lived through 5 winter famines. Doesn't flinch when someone dies. Doesn't blink when someone begs. And twins Arlen and Kit. Half wild, half feral. Raised in the collapsed zones where language failed and instinct ruled. They move like smoke and stab like wind. Me? I'm not the strongest, not the fastest, but I remember everything. The scout ship was low to the ground, legs extended into the cracked pavement like talons. A small ramp protruded from its underbelly, steaming slightly from the heat of re-entry. No guards, no drones, just humming energy and that metallic Vern smell, ozone, melted copper, antiseptic death. We waited in the ruins for 3 hours, watching, breathing slow. Then the hatch hissed. Out came a single figure, slender, armored in something that shimmered between liquid metal and polished bone. Vern, definitely. Their shape is unmistakable. Bipedal, elongated limbs, no mouth. Just that pulsing membrane of a face, reacting to stimuli like a mood ring wired to murder. This one had a staff. That's how you knew it was a scout officer. Not just surveillance. Command class. Even better. We watched it move, scanning the environment, touching rubble with gloved fingers like it was examining Earth's corpse. Arrogant, careless, like a tourist admiring a ruin. Dax looked at me. Can I eat it? Wait till it screams, I whispered. He grinned. When we attacked, we moved like the world ending. Arlen and Kit darted first, blades drawn, silent shadows slicing through the haze. Mora's rifle barked once, shattering the air. The Vern's shoulder splashed open, silver ichor spraying in an arc. It reacted fast, spinning the staff like a whirlwind, releasing a pulse that sent Arlen flying through a rusted wall. But I was already moving. My boots hit the ground just as its back turned. I slammed my shock gauntlet into the base of its spine and triggered a full volt blast. The Vern spasmed, legs locking, arms twisting at impossible angles. Dax tackled it mid-collapse, pinning it like a rabid beast. Kit slid its staff hand clean off. Mora placed a blade to its throat. Though Vern don't have throats, it's symbolic. We surrounded it as it writhed, bleeding and glitching, pulsing with blue-white energy. Its head turned toward me. A low whine escaped its face membrane. Almost a question. I leaned close. Earth says hello. Then I cracked its helmet open. Interrogating a Vern is like deciphering lightning. They don't speak. They transmit. Frequencies, pulse patterns, neural distortions. We don't fully understand their tech, but we've learned enough to rip what we need from it. Echo helps with that. She's not alive. Not really. Just a shard of a war AI we found buried under an old Pentagon relic vault. She talks like a poet, but thinks like a missile. Wired her into our Skulljack rig 2 winters ago. While the crew stripped the Vern Scout's armor, I fed its neural spines into Echo's interface. There was static, then data, then screaming. They're coming, Echo said. Not scouts, not harvesters. A full cleansing fleet. My blood went cold. Timeline: 6 Earth rotations. They will burn the crust and extract the planetary core for spore seeding. I stepped back, while rising in my throat. 6 days. We've survived for decades underground, in filth, in silence. We thought they'd forgotten us, that we'd become legend. But they didn't forget. They're just ready to finish the job. We left the scout ship in flames. Mora rigged the core to explode. Dax spit on the burning wreck as it bloomed into the night. I looked up at the stars, burning dots of white fire in a black ocean. Somewhere up there, a Vern fleet was preparing, weapons charged, coordinates locked, ready to cleanse the last speck of resistance from this broken marble. They thought we were extinct. They thought wrong. I turned to the crew. Their eyes were fire. We wake the horde, I said. We've lived long enough in the shadows. Now it's time to make noise. Time to remind them what Earth really is. Not a graveyard, not a ruin, a forge, and we are what it made. Steel, rage, fire. This planet isn't finished. It's just getting started. They didn't just kill our cities. They salted the soil. They wanted Earth to forget us, to erase the memory of humanity like a name scratched from a gravestone. But they forgot something. You can bury fire, but you can't kill it. Not if it's burning in blood. 6 days. That's how long we had before the cleansing fleet arrived. That number kept echoing in my skull like a death drum. Echo had confirmed it. 6 Earth rotations before the Vern turned our planet into glass and scraped what was left into the vacuum. We didn't have fleets. We didn't have governments. We had rusted rifles, tribal alliances, and a will carved from centuries of pain. In me, in memories that burn hotter than any plasma cannon, we left the wreckage of the Vern Scout behind us and descended into the veins of the city, what used to be the subway, now a network of cracked tunnels, makeshift homes, and war shrines. The deeper we went, the older the air got. It was full of whispers and static. You could almost hear the echoes of the old world, the laughter, the chaos, the screaming. This place raised me. It was my cradle, my cage, my forge. My first memory? Firelight dancing across steel beams. My mother coughing blood into a rag. My father checking the perimeter with an old assault rifle duct taped to hell. They told me stories every night, not of princesses or dragons, but of Earth's fall. The way the sky split open with light. The way the Vern rained down spores that ate your mind. The way cities went silent one by one. How nukes stopped working. How hope decayed like bone in acid. My lullabies were casualty numbers and battle logs. When I was 6, my father took me to see a dying Vern. They had it strapped to a scaffold, its membrane face pulsing erratically. Someone had carved earth glyphs into its chest. My father handed me a blade, no bigger than my palm, and said, "This is how we remember." I stabbed it once. It made no sound, but it never blinked again. Back in the present, we entered Hearthvault 9, the oldest surviving human enclave in the northeastern zone. It's a city made of bones, tanks, shipwrecked aircraft, and salvaged metro cars welded into towering pillars. Above it, pipes belch steam like smoke signals. Inside, the air always smells of iron and old oil. The elders still remember me here. Most think I'm already dead. Others think I'm cursed. They're not wrong. As I stepped into the central chamber, a wide dome where fires burned in old subway shells, eyes followed me like ghosts stalking a preacher. My crew fanned out to hold the perimeter. Mora vanished into a sniper's nest. Arlen and Kit slithered into shadows. Dax stood at my side, knuckles twitching. Old man Rudo limped from the altar with his staff of cables and 4 lines. A dozen cables jutted from his spine, connecting him to ancient data slabs and fused tech relics. "Reeve," he rasped, like the wind dragging a blade across stone. "Come to recite the last rites." "Not yet," I said. "I need the furnace." The chamber fell silent. Even the fires seemed to stop crackling. "You want to wake the Fireborn," Rudo said. "I want to arm them." He frowned. "That's forbidden tech," even Echo said. "Echo's back online, and she says we've got 6 days." Rudo's face twisted. I saw the moment he believed me, not in my words, but in my eyes. That's the thing about survivors. We can smell the end before it arrives. The furnace is what we call the old armory. No one's touched it in decades. Not since the last uprising failed and the West collapsed into irradiated wastelands. It's buried beneath layers of lockdown tech, sealed behind biometric walls only a blood match can open. My blood. I pressed my palm to the reader. It stung like a hornet. The metal hissed. Steam jets screamed and ancient hydraulics groaned like a beast waking from centuries of slumber. The door cracked open with a sound like splitting bones. Inside, dust, silence, and the fire. Weapons older than me, crafted before the collapse, modified by survivors, hackers, dreamers, madmen. Guns with names carved into their grips. Swords made from tank plating and plasma conduits. Power packs glowing dimly in the dark, still humming with purpose. And in the center, the red engine, a forged reactor built by the last UN weapons engineers, capable of printing war gear using old DNA templates. It could shape armor from scrap, fire from air. We hadn't used it in 40 years, but it still remembered. Echo flickered into my neural feed. Her voice was soft, haunted. Are you sure? Reeve? No. Then why are you doing this? Because someone has to. We worked through the night. Kit and Arlen fed the forge raw materials, melted Vern plating, broken drones, even bones from the bone market. Dax tested the old power cores. Mora calibrated the pulse rifles and checked the sights. I rewrote the Fireborn protocols, modifying Echo's imprint into every unit. We were turning memories into weapons. By dawn, we had 10 suits of armor, each forged in heat and hate. No fancy shields, no AI assist, just brute strength, enhanced reflex servos, and melee adaptability. We called them the Ironborn, first ones since the last Earth War, and I'd lead them. But weapons weren't enough. We needed allies. We needed the old tribes. At midday, we left Hearth Vault 9, took the southern tunnels toward the Screamer Zones, what used to be Jersey, now a radioactive swamp haunted by the Veilborn, humans twisted by biocontamination. They see in the dark, hear your heartbeat. Their eyes glow like coals. Some say they eat memory, but I know better. They're what happens when humans adapt too well. I fought beside them before, long ago, back when my brother was still alive. The tunnels collapsed behind us as we moved, deliberate, strategic. Echo mapped the old world overlays into my HUD, and I followed the ghost of my past through decayed skeletons of cities. My people didn't come from shining towers or clean streets. We came from filth, from fallout, from the fire beneath. We made it to the edge of the Veil border by sundown. They were waiting for us, a dozen of them, skin pale and veined with dark blue light, armor fused to flesh, faces covered in tribal steel. Their leader stepped forward, taller than me, carrying a war spear made from a satellite core. Reeve, she hissed. Hello, Kale, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You said you'd never come back. I lied. She smiled. That's how I knew we had a chance. I knelt and placed the cracked helmet of the Vern Scout at her feet. They're coming, I said. 6 days. She didn't speak. She just reached down, lifted the helmet, and crushed it in one hand. Then she turned to her tribe and howled. The howl echoed across the ruins, through dead buildings, past shattered glass towers and rusted sky rails. It was a call older than language, a warning, a challenge, a promise. When Earth died, it didn't fade away. It went underground. It bled. It waited. And now? Now it's waking up. They called it the last safe house. A fortress buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, built by the last UN Defense Council during the final skyfall. Sealed in steel, carved in fear, powered by dying sun cells and the dreams of desperate engineers. It wasn't just a bunker. It was Earth's last whisper, and I was going there to make it scream. We moved fast. The Veilborn joined us, Kale and her tribe, silent as smoke and twice as deadly. With their senses and our Fireborn gear, we carved a path west through the shattered American wastes. The world had not healed. Everything still reeked of rot, ozone, and old betrayals. We crossed husks of cities, skeletal freeways tangled in collapsed overpasses, forests of concrete overgrown by red moss and twisted bramble. In one stretch, the ground glowed blue from dormant plasma spills. We didn't touch it. Nothing that shines wants to be touched anymore. The sky above was a permanent bruise, muted gray, the sun a dim smear behind poisonous clouds. But the stars? They still watched. And somewhere out there, the Vern fleet drifted closer. Echo kept whispering coordinates in my head. The route to the safe house was encoded in my DNA, passed down from my father, who passed it down from a dying soldier who once held the line in the First War. The world forgets, but war remembers. On the 5th night, we found the gate. It was embedded in the side of a mountain, hidden behind an avalanche of old debris and self-growing camouflage metal. A dead transport carrier lay half-swallowed by the hillside, its nose jutting from the rock like a skeletal finger. I approached the control plate and pressed my bloodied thumb against it. The mountain blinked, and then it groaned. A cascade of ancient mechanisms whirred awake, groaning through centuries of silence. The rock split, steel plates folded open like armored petals, and a tunnel yawned before us, lined with flickering lights and ancient warning glyphs in every Earth language ever spoken. A voice crackled from the intercom. Female, synthetic, wounded, unsafe protocols engaged. Warning, Echo 9 Alpha detected. Access granted. Echo, in my head, responded, "Hello again, sister." We entered single file, every step echoing through metal. It was like walking into a time capsule. Every wall bore the scars of war. Bullet holes, plasma burns, old blood frozen into the floor. In some corridors, we passed mummified corpses, soldiers who sealed the doors from inside, waiting for reinforcements that never came. In one room, a projector looped a final UN broadcast. "This is not the end. Earth remembers. Humanity resists. No surrender. Not now. Not ever." The face was cracked, the voice distorted, but I felt it like a dagger in my ribs. At the heart of the facility, we found Echo Prime. It wasn't a server room. It was a cathedral of wires. A massive chamber with columns of humming data crystals, spiraling like DNA into the ceiling. The air was heavy with static and ancient grief. Echo's voice, cleaner now, fuller, filled the space. "You brought me home, Reeve. Didn't realize this was where you were born." "I wasn't born. I was compiled, grown, made to carry the last memories of the old world. I remember every soldier who died here. I carry their screams like code." A pause. "Would you like to hear them?" "No." Wise. I approached the central pedestal. It pulsed faintly. Old command panels blinked awake, greeting me with biometric scans and military authentication requests. My blood unlocked them all. I was the last living descendant of Commander Leona Strom, final holder of Earth's war codes. The Vern thought they'd killed her entire line. They missed one. I activated the systems. The room roared. Screens lit up. Tactical holograms flickered. Ancient defense schematics bled into my retinal display. A massive planetary overlay appeared. Earth, wrapped in orbital rings and old defense grids. Most were offline, fried, buried. Some had decayed completely, but not all. Echo whispered again. Orbital lances Gamma 7 through Delta 2 remain semi-operational. Power cells weak, targeting degraded, but with enough energy. I turned to her. "You could light them, not alone." That's when Kale spoke for the first time since we arrived. "You brought us to a tomb." I shook my head. "No. I brought us to a matchbox." Her eyes narrowed. "You plan to wake the sky?" "Only if we want to keep what's left of the ground." There was one final piece. The vault. It wasn't meant for weapons. It was for memory. Deep beneath Echo Prime, sealed behind a DNA-locked vault door, was the War Archive, a chamber filled with data cores containing every recorded battle of the First War. Drone footage, field reports, combat tactics, real-time reactions, psychological breakdowns. It wasn't history. It was experience. I stepped into the vault and stood before the data core throne. Echo spoke one final time. "If you connect, you won't come back the same. I never left the war. This is different. I'm ready." The moment I linked the neural tether, the world exploded. Suddenly, I was everywhere. I was a soldier screaming in a burning trench while Vern plasma cut through the sky. I was a child on Europa watching her parents mutate into ash. I was a pilot sacrificing her ship to intercept a Vern spore cruiser before it entered Earth's orbit. I felt rage, despair, defiance, and something else. Something sharper than all of them. Hope, but not soft hope. Not the kind you dream on. The kind you bleed for. The kind you scream into the void so loud it echoes through time. When I awoke, hours later, my eyes bled. My muscles twitched. My breath came ragged. But I remembered everything. Their weaknesses, their formations, their arrogance. The Vern had evolved, yes, but they had also gotten complacent. They believed humanity was gone. They were not ready for what was coming. We stayed in the safe house for 2 days. Those were the only days I felt peace in my entire life. Echo showed us hidden caches, plasma blades, cryo rounds, armor suits woven with reactive nanometal. I gave Kale a spear built from a reformed meteor core. Dax mounted a shoulder cannon once used by Earth's orbital drop infantry. Mora installed tracking systems into the sniper towers we'd build later. The Fireborn suits were upgraded. The Veilborn trained with us. Every breath was preparation. Every silence was a drumbeat. Every moment, a countdown. Before we left, I stood on the edge of the mountain, wind howling around me. Echo spoke one last time before I disconnected her from the vault systems. You understand now, don't you? That we were never supposed to win? No. That we were always supposed to survive. I nodded. Let's show them what that looks like. As we left the safe house, we sent a pulse through the deep relay, one of the last Earth-wide broadcasts still intact. It wasn't a message of hope. It was a call to arms. This is Reeve, son of Earth, holder of Iron Code. To every human, Veilborn, Fireborn, and bastard left on this world. Wake up. The Vern are coming, and we're not running. I paused. Then I said it. The line we'd all been waiting to hear for 100 years. Operation Gray Fire is active. The first thing you learn in the waste is that no one comes when you call for help. The second thing? If you want to try to bleed for you, you better show them why your blood matters first. After we activated Operation Gray Fire, the pulse echoed through the old world like a heartbeat kicking back into rhythm. Not a signal of hope. No, we weren't that foolish. It was a challenge, a call, a snarl. And out there, in the dust-choked valleys and reactor-shattered tundras, someone was always listening. We rode west in silence. For Fireborn, a Veilborn war priestess, and the weight of Earth's last rebellion on our backs. The sky hadn't changed. Still dim, still broken, but we had. Our first stop was the Iron Maw. That's what they call the canyons north of the Salt Lands. Once Utah, I think. Now it's a jagged wastegate of twisted steel and scorched bone. That's where the scrap clans rule. Nomads, engineers, scavenger kings. Their leader was a machine-fused bastard named Thrake, 3 meters tall, plated with repurposed tank armor, voice modulated by shattered artillery. I'd fought him once, and I broke his jaw. Now I was riding into his den asking for help. We didn't approach like beggars. We approached like storms, through black dust and smoke trails. Our Fireborn suits gleamed red under the ashlight. Kale walked with her Veilborn guard like death given form. Mora took over watch, her rifle singing across the peaks as warning shots to curious scouts. We weren't here to parley. We were here to recruit, or raise. Thrake met us in the canyon hall, a cathedral of wreckage. Old train cars fused into spires, engine blocks carved into thrones, solar panels stitched into stained glass overhead. He rose from his war throne with a grinding screech. Reeve, he growled, his jaw still cracked, voice like thunder through gravel. Back from the dead, are you? No, I said. Never died. Kale smirked behind me. Thrake chuckled. You've got oil in your veins. That's the only reason I haven't turned you to scrap. I stepped forward and tossed the Vern scout's skull at his feet. This was just their scout. A fleet's coming. 6 days. They'll burn what's left of Earth. He stared at the skull, studied it, then looked at me like I was flame. And what? You think you can stop them with myths and old war codes? No, I said, but I can remind them what human extinction costs. That night, Thrake held the old trial of sparks. It's how the clans decide if you're worth following. You step into the forge ring and fight barehanded, one-on-one, against a war champion of their choosing. Winner leads, loser bleeds. I didn't hesitate. They sent in Farah, a woman twice my size, augments built into her spine and blades for fingers. Her face was tattooed with reactor warnings. Her eyes? Black glass. We fought like animals. She broke my ribs. I shattered her kneecap. She gashed my shoulder. I crushed her trachea. When she went down, I staggered back, bleeding, panting, and grinning through cracked teeth. Thrake didn't clap. He just nodded. The next morning, 300 scrap clanners packed their gear. Engineers, gunners, welders, matched on ramshackle legs. They brought every salvaged cannon, drone, and death ike they had. We were building an army out of wreckage, and it was beautiful, but that was just one piece. The real challenge was further north, in the Glint Reaches, where the sky touches the tundra and the snow never stops falling. That's where the silent choir lives. They don't talk, not because they can't, because they won't. They believe words weaken the soul. Their warriors, clad in glacial bone and whisper thread, fight without sound, strike without mercy, and only follow strength. You don't recruit them. You prove yourself to them. We entered the Glint Reaches under a whiteout. Visibility dropped to meters. Wind howled like banshees across jagged ice. Our suits strained just to keep body heat up, but they were watching. You always know when the choir is watching. The hairs on your neck stand. The cold gets sharper. You feel the sound disappear. That's when you kneel. You kneel in silence. And you bleed. I slit my palm open and let the blood hit the snow. Then I drew a symbol in it, the iron sigil, the old Earth resistance mark, and waited. No words, no movement, only the wind. Then, after an hour of stillness, they appeared. 10 of them, faces veiled, feet barefoot on snow, blades made from something older than steel. They stood still as statues, judging us with nothing but breath and gaze. One stepped forward, carved a single line across his own palm, mirrored my sigil, then vanished. By nightfall, they were following, not speaking, not nodding, just present, silent ghosts, but ghosts that kill gods. We returned to the bastion 2 days later. Our numbers had swelled. Clanner, choir, Veyborn, and more were still coming. We were building a storm. Inside the bastion, Echo had begun reconstructing old defense grids. She'd activated 3 orbital platforms, restored 20% targeting capacity, and armed 12 autonomous artillery stations. Dax was working with the clanners to fuse drone tech into mobile weapons. Kale taught the choir how to move through the tunnels like shadows. Mora trained a sniper battalion from old-world guerrillas. And me? I watched it all from the central command tower, hand pressed against the old Earth flag engraved in rusted steel. We weren't soldiers. We weren't heroes. We were the warborn, born in fallout, forged in loss, sharpened by silence. That night, Echo gave us a gift. She decrypted a final broadcast from the First Vern War. It was a memory, recorded on the last day of Earth's resistance. We played it across the bastion, over every loudspeaker. A woman's voice, worn but strong. To those who come after us, know that we did not go quietly. They came from stars, but we came from fire. They had fleets, but we had fury. And when the last of us fell, we did not beg. We bit, we burned, we bled. We are not gone. We are not ash. We are the ghosts beneath your feet, and we are watching. When the message ended, no one spoke, not even the choir, but everyone felt it. The storm was here, and it had a name. The sky broke open at dawn, not with light, with screams. They came in waves, silver-black behemoths cracking through the clouds like knives through silk. Vern fleet ships, hundreds of them, shaped like daggers, wings outstretched like the ribs of extinct monsters. Their shadows swallowed entire regions as they descended. Echo's voice hit my skull before I could even blink. They're deploying from orbit. 2 spearhead cruisers for carrier cores, 1 capital dreadnought trailing. Estimated drop points: Americas, Eurasia, Austral zones. You're standing at ground zero, Reeve. I smiled. Good. Let them come. I stood on the ramparts of the bastion, wind tearing at my coat, fireborne armor burning beneath. Around me, the tribe banners snapped in the ashwind. To the east, Kale and her Veilborn circled their war beasts, monstrosities bred in reactor swamps, armored in bone and glowing like dying stars. To the west, the scrap clans had mounted siege guns on top of mobile crawlers. Their cannons were stitched together from ancient artillery, reprogrammed Vern plasma coils, and pure industrial madness. Above us, Echo brought the last of the orbital defenses online. Satellites hummed, lances blinked red, and still the sky kept bleeding ships. We didn't wait. Humanity's always been bad at waiting. My gauntlet chimed. Dax's face blinked in, covered in soot and blood, grinning. They're dropping pods over the lower trench lines. How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands. I tilted my head. Sounds fair. I dropped from the bastion wall like a thunderbolt, suit boosters kicking in a split second before impact. Landed hard on the cracked concrete of the south trench, 50 meters from the first drop pod. It hit like a meteor. Steam hissed. Metal twisted. Then it opened. Out stepped the first Vern shock trooper, 7 feet tall, chitin armor glistening, plasma halberd crackling. No face, just that membrane, rippling, shifting, pulsing like a heartbeat you can't silence. Behind it, more pods cracking open like eggshells. The birth of an invasion. I raised my blade. Welcome to Earth, I muttered. Then I charged. My blade met its halberd with a scream of sparks. The Vern fought like a machine, precise, brutal, elegant. But I fought like a man, unhinged, furious, wild. We exchanged blows, dodging and parrying in a flurry of impact that cracked pavement and echoed down the trench line. I ducked low, slid under its swing, and drove my blade straight through its gut. Silver ichor sprayed across my visor. The Vern collapsed. I didn't stop. The trench became a killing ground. Pods fell like rain. Fireborn charged into the melee with industrial buzzswords and retooled mining hammers. Scrap clanners fired rocket lances from their crawl bikes. Choir warriors glided like ghosts, silent, precise, impaling Vern before they even landed. Veilborn warbeasts charged the carriers, smashing into Vern shock units with tusks of reactor-forged iron. The air burned with plasma and shrapnel. And still, we pushed. Echo piped in. Secondary carrier just deployed ground stabilizers. They're setting up forward pylons. Once the dreadnought lands, planetary cleansing will begin. I spat blood onto the dirt. Not if we cleanse them first. I rallied my strike team. Dax, Mora, Kale, and 2 scrap clanners named Hex and Rook. Our mission: cripple the forward pylon. Without it, the Vern couldn't land the dreadnought safely. That meant no spore bombs, no terraforming, no planet bleed protocols. It was suicide, but that's our specialty. We cut through the trench lines in a storm of chaos. Mora's sniper rounds peeled open Vern helmets with precision that bordered on divine. Dax tore through exo-armored elites like wet paper, bellowing as he snapped limbs and crushed throats. Kale danced like a whisper of vengeance, her twin blades humming as they slid through joints and membranes. Me? I led the charge straight into the belly of the beast. The pylon was massive for stories tall, anchored by clawed spires into the Earth's crust. At its core pulsed a reactor heart, guarded by a dozen elite Vern sentinels. Faster, smarter, crueler. They turned as we approached. I grinned. Let's give them a new memory. The battle was pure madness. Hex went down first, ripped in half by a spinning glaive. Rook lasted longer, taking out 2 sentinels with a plasma-charged scythe before a pike pierced his chest. Kale carved open 3 with surgical grace, her armor glowing with reactor blood. Dax tackled one off a ledge and brought the entire scaffold down with it. Mora's rounds lit the air, but the sentinels kept coming, and the reactor kept pulsing. I reached the core. My HUD screamed warnings. The pylon was stabilizing. 30 seconds to full anchor. Echo screamed in my ear. You have to overload the core, Reeve. I'm trying. Then let me help. Suddenly, my gauntlet lit up. Echo transferred into the pylon's systems, hijacking the Vern encryption. Alarms blared. Plasma coils sputtered. The sentinels turned toward me. 10 seconds. 9. 8. They rushed me. I activated my last Warborn override. Rage protocol engaged. My armor surged, reflex boosters maxed, pain inhibitors blocked. My vision tunneled into a storm of red and white. I met the first sentinel head-on, snapped its halberd in half, drove my blade through its throat, spun into the next, severed a leg, then crushed its skull underfoot. They swarmed, but I didn't care. This wasn't survival. This was message delivery. Echo screamed the countdown in my skull. 3, 2, 1. I drove my gauntlet into the reactor and roared. The world went white. When I woke, I was half buried in rubble. Dax was dragging me out by the shoulder, bleeding from a dozen wounds, grinning like an idiot. You alive? He coughed. Not sure. I said, well, you're swearing, so probably. The pylon was gone. Just a crater now, smoking and glowing blue. No dreadnought, no cleansing. Earth held. Back at the bastion, the news spread like wildfire. We'd held the first line. We'd killed elites. We'd bled the unkillable. For the first time in over 100 years, humanity won the opening battle. That night, we didn't celebrate. We sharpened weapons, buried the dead, reforged armor, and watched the sky. Because this was only the beginning. The Vern would retaliate. Harder, smarter, crueler. But we'd made them bleed. And blood remembers. They came back thinking Earth was a corpse. Instead, they found a second planet. Not second Earth like a colony. No, second Earth like a beast reborn. Feral, furious, and very much alive. You don't really hear silence until after the screaming stops. That night, after we destroyed the pylon, there was a moment, just one, that the world forgot to breathe. The air was still thick with plasma smoke. Blood steamed in the trenches. Vern corpses glistened like broken obsidian under a red sky. We stood knee-deep in the aftermath, staring at the stars. And I swear, for a second, the sky looked afraid. We limped back to the bastion. Dax had 3 broken ribs and a smile that wouldn't quit. Kale was quiet, face unreadable beneath her veil-born helm. She lost 2 of her kin during the pylon assault, but you wouldn't know it. Grief among her people is personal, silent, burned behind the eyes. Mora was already drawing new sniper lines in the northern ridges. Her rifle had melted at the barrel. She didn't even flinch, just swapped the chamber, cleaned the scope, and whispered, "Next time, I aim for the core." Me? I couldn't stop shaking. It wasn't fear. It was something older, deeper, like the bones of the world were humming. Echo pulsed into my neural feed the moment we crossed the perimeter. The fleet has adjusted course. Dreadnoughts holding position in low orbit. No more ground pylons deployed. They're regrouping. How long do we have? Unknown. They're studying us. I spit blood onto a floor plate. Let them. That night, we counted our dead. 67 from the scrap clans, 12 choir, 5 veilborn, 2 fireborn, 96 warriors turned to ash and legend. I read their names aloud in the bastion's central chamber, under the flickering sigil of earth. No gods, no prayers, just names. That's enough. Names make them real again. The next morning, the sky burned. Not with fire, with sound. The Vern had unleashed their next move. Echo detected it first. Orbital emitters have activated. Frequencies matching psionic dissonance patterns. They're jamming. Jamming what? Us. Each other. The world. She was right. Our comms flickered. Neural feeds stuttered. Fireborn suit protocols dropped offline in pulses. Even the choir, those bastards who barely flinch, started grabbing their heads like knives were being driven into their thoughts. And worse, the bastion began to crack. Literally. Walls buckled. Ceiling plates trembled. The fortress wasn't just being jammed, it was being shaken. We retreated to the core levels, the oldest part of the bastion, the part no one remembered. That's where we found it. Not buried, not hidden, just waiting. At the base of the old command shaft was a sealed vault door, covered in dust and data rot. Half the team thought it was a structural node, but Kale stepped forward, pressed her palm to the lock plate, and it opened. Inside, a cavern, not natural, engineered. The walls pulsed with old tech, pre-collapse, pre-war. We found scaffolds covered in blackout tarps, cables the size of tree trunks, and a central platform like a shrine built for war gods. Echo lit up so hard she nearly fried my neural socket. This isn't in any of my files. Mora whistled low. What the hell is it? Kale ran a finger across the plating. Not. What? Who? Dax found the label. Faded. Almost erased. One word. Goliath. We powered it up. It woke like a volcano. The bastion shuddered. Generators kicked into overdrive. Lights flared blood red. And the thing, this sleeping titan, rose from its platform. A war mech. Not like anything I'd seen before. 10 meters tall. Plated in reactive alloy. Arms like tanks. Core glowing with something not entirely of Earth. Its HUD flickered onto our feeds. Goliath Protocol. Alpha Prime engaged. Command authority required. Strom lineage. Echo gasped. Reeve, that's you. I stepped forward, palm against the control plate. The mech locked onto me like a forgotten god recognizing a prophet. Genetic match confirmed. Commander Reeve Strom. Earth last defense. Goliath online. The room fell silent. No one moved. Even Dax looked small in front of it. I whispered, you were supposed to be a myth. Echo's voice trembled. No, Reeve, you were. We spent the next 48 hours prepping the bastion for siege. The Vern had paused, but not retreated. We'd hurt them. Now they were going to get serious. More positioned rail guns across the canyon ridges. Choir warriors dug silent tunnels beneath enemy staging zones. Veilborn fused reactor-charged spears into living lightning rods. And Goliath stood guard at the main gate, unmoving, watching. I couldn't activate it fully. Not yet. It required something I didn't have. Something buried. On the third day, the sky changed again. Clouds didn't just ripple, they parted. Like something was making room. Echo's voice was grave. The dreadnought is descending, not a fast drop. A slow, deliberate one. Measured, like death taking its time. Inside the bastion, fear spread. You could feel it in the metal, in the pauses between orders, in the tremble behind even Kale's words. Because we'd seen what a dreadnought can do. We'd seen them burn cities to bone, vaporize oceans, rewrite atmospheres. Now it was coming here. That night, I returned to the core vault alone, stared at Goliath. Its eyes glowed faintly, waiting, wanting. Echo appeared in my HUD. Her voice was barely a whisper. Reeve, it wasn't just built for combat. I know. It needs a sacrifice. I turned to her slowly. What kind? A memory. A pure one. Untouched by war. A tethered to humanity. I laughed. Bitter. Broken. You know I don't have one. Then find one, or none of us will survive. I sat there for hours, back against Goliath's metal foot, searching my mind for something pure, something not forged in fire. And I found it. My mother's voice. A lullaby, cracked and off-key, sung in a ventilation shaft lit by candlelight. The only song I ever heard before the collapse. She died that same night, but her voice? It never left. I sang it back, quiet, shaky, barely more than a whisper. And Goliath moved, just one step, but it was enough. I stood, stared into the glowing heart of Earth's last titan. Are you ready? It answered with silence. And then, let's show them what Earth remembers. The sky didn't crack. It sank, like a dead god descending with rusted wings. We watched from the southern ramparts of the bastion, breath held, shoulders tight, every pair of eyes locked upward. The clouds above didn't just part, they evaporated, pulled into a spiraling void as the Vern dreadnought pierced the atmosphere. It moved like a planet that had forgotten it wasn't supposed to fall. Kilometers wide, a hull that shimmered like a dying star, tentacle-like appendages drifting in low orbit, crackling with gravity shears and atmospheric conversion arrays. Its engines alone scorched the sky black, and at its center, a single red eye, watching, judging. Echo's voice came tight in my skull. Vern Dreadnought Nethsir, first used in the burning of Europa, reclassified as a Plaint Breaker-class vessel. Firepower, enough to make us a memory. Dax, standing beside me in his suit, adjusted his shoulder cannon. Then we better make it a good memory. Kale muttered something in Veilborn tongue, something sharp and aching, like a prayer spoken to a god you don't believe in anymore. The choir stood silent as tombstones. The clanners loaded every shell they had into the last of the mobile crawlers. And deep beneath our boots, Goliath stood in silence, heart pulsing slowly, like a titan dreaming of war. We didn't have hours. We didn't even have minutes. The dreadnought fired, not at us, at space. A soundless, blazing spear of crimson energy stabbed the sky and tore through one of Echo's orbital satellites. Echo's voice shattered in my head, distorted and furious. They're targeting my uplinks, disabling fire support. We're going blind. A second beam lanced downward. It didn't hit us. It hit the valley beyond the bastion, a refugee pocket. 300 civilians. Gone. Vaporized. No scream. No warning. Just nothing. I grabbed the rail, fingers tight enough to dent steel. They're toying with us. No. Echo whispered. They're testing us. They want to see if we'll kneel. I looked at the others. Dax, Kale, Mora. Veyborn and clanners and choir warriors watching me with steady eyes. I hope they're watching, I said, because Earth doesn't kneel. I gave the order. All batteries. All positions. Fire at will. The bastion roared to life. Railguns along the cliffs unleashed hypersonic shells that screamed upward into the void. Choir saboteurs triggered hidden mines around the landing zones. Scrap clanner artillery lit up the sky with plasma arcs and EMP flak. Even Veilborn storm riders, mounted on irradiated beasts, launched upward, throwing harpoon chains into Vern dropships as they fell. It was beautiful, and it was not enough. The dreadnought deployed its next wave. Thousands of drop pods, black and burning, rained down like iron comets. The earth shook as they landed, splitting trenches, caving tunnels, and sending bodies flying. Each pod opened with a hiss. Not just shock troopers this time. These were Hollowborn, twisted mockeries of humanity, spliced with Vern tech, armor fused to flesh, voices reduced to static-laced screams. Once human soldiers turned into rage machines. Some still had faces I recognized. Old resistance leaders, dead decades ago. Now puppets. Now tools. My breath caught in my throat. Mora was already firing from the ridge. We're getting swarmed, Reeve. You need to move now. I activated my fireborne boosters and launched myself down into the heart of the bastion courtyard, where Hollowborn were tearing through the second defense line. I landed hard, shattering the concrete, and plunged my blade through the nearest creature's chest. Its face twitched, trying to remember what pain was. I reminded it. The bastion became a slaughterhouse. Steel against bone, fire against acid, screams layered over screams. Dax held the west tunnel alone, his cannon roaring like thunder, each blast flinging bodies back like toys. Kale danced through the chaos with impossible grace, slicing down Hollowborn with every motion, her armor drenched in blood that steamed off like mist. The choir moved in coordinated silence, weapons slicing without pause. And still, they kept coming. Echo's voice returned. Reeve, the dreadnought is charging a gravity spear. How long? 30 seconds. If it hits the bastion's core, we're ash. That was it. There was no more time. I slammed my gauntlet into the bastion's main relay. Wake the Titan. Goliath stirred. The earth shook, not from weapons, not from impacts, from footsteps. The great vault walls cracked apart. Steel groaned. Floors trembled. And from the dark emerged Earth's last god of war, Goliath. 10 meters of fire and fury. Every step sent tremors through the walls. His chest glowed with the light of a captive sun. Arm cannons extended from both sides, blades, guns, and reactor emitters humming in deadly sync. Echo's voice changed. Not a whisper now, not a guide, a command. Targeting locked. Reeve, direct me. On my mark, I said. Burn the sky. Goliath roared, not with a voice, with existence. It surged forward, cutting through the remaining Hollowborn like they weren't even there. One swing of its blade arm sent bodies flying into the walls. A stomp shattered the earth and sent Vern's shock troopers into a crater. It activated its boosters and launched up, straight into the air, straight toward the dreadnought. Echo had synced the mech's trajectory perfectly. The gravity spear fired, a beam of impossible pressure cutting through the upper atmosphere, and Goliath met it head-on. The blast lit up the sky like a second sun. For a heartbeat, everything went white. Then, impact. The entire world shuddered. Mountains cracked. The bastion buckled. And above us, something impossible. The dreadnought staggered. Goliath hadn't pierced it, but it had absorbed the blast, redirected it, and now it was climbing straight into the enemy's hull. We watched the battle through Echo's direct feed. Goliath tore through external turrets like a flame through paper. Its blade arm embedded into the dreadnought's belly, sparks flying. It launched EMP bursts into the superstructure. We watched as its feet tore paths through hull armor. And then it reached the core access vent. Echo's voice was raw now, fracturing. I can breach it, Reeve, but once I go in, I'm not coming back. My throat went dry. You're part of this war, Echo. You're part of us. That's why I'll go. The last thing she said wasn't to me. It was to the Vern. Echo's voice blasted through every frequency in the sky. This is Earth. You came to bury US, but we were roots. You came to burn US, but we were fire. And now, you meet our Titan. Remember US. Then she detonated the core. A shockwave split the heavens. Not just light. Memory. Echo had fused her data into the blast, burned every name, every scream, every story of Earth's resistance into that one final pulse. The dreadnought didn't explode. It collapsed, like it remembered what fear felt like. Pieces rained down across the plains, some burning, some twisted, some glowing with symbols of a war no one remembered. But we did. Goliath fell with it, broken, burning, but intact. The bastion stood, barely, but so did we. I stood in the courtyard as ash drifted around me like snow. Wounded, exhausted, armor cracked, but alive, more limp to my side. Dax groaned, half buried in rubble, grinning like an idiot. Kale sat with her blades across her lap, watching the sky as if waiting for it to blink again. No one said anything. We just watched the clouds slowly close, and the sun finally rise. For the first time in years, it wasn't red. Victory tastes like blood and ash. And there's nothing more human than the taste of both. The sky had stopped burning. The dreadnought was a smoldering husk, a monument to what Earth had done to it. And yet, in the silence that followed, the true cost of that victory began to sink in. We didn't have time to mourn our losses. We didn't have time to think about the losses. The bastion had been shattered. Cracks ran through the walls. Whole sectors had collapsed in on themselves under the Vern bombardment. We had casualties, and not just from the battle. The aftermath was just beginning. I stood in the core chamber, looking out over the ruined landscape. The once pristine valley below was now a charred expanse of twisted metal and burning debris. Beyond that, the horizon was an apocalyptic wasteland. The remnants of the Vern invasion spread out in flaming pockets. Goliath was in the hangar, barely functional, but it was ours, and it had won. Mora walked up beside me, rifle slung over her shoulder, her face streaked with dirt and blood. She had the look of someone who had seen too much but was still standing, still breathing. Is it over? She asked, voice low. No, I said, feeling the weight of it. It's never over. The resistance was fractured, no longer just united by the need for survival, but now by the crushing realization that we were the last bastion of humanity. There would be no reinforcements, no relief, just us, the bones of Earth, and the looming shadow of the Vern. The next battle wasn't going to be won by bullets or titans. It was going to be won by hope. We didn't have the luxury of planning. The Vern would return. They always did. Their scouts had already started to reform and rebuild. We had 6 days, maybe less, before the next wave of reinforcements arrived. And this time, it wasn't going to be a dreadnought. It would be everything. That night, I sat alone in the war room, watching as data poured in from every remaining satellite and comm relay. Echo was running diagnostics on the remaining defense systems, and Dax was yelling orders over the comms to reinforce the outer fortifications. But it was Kale who spoke up from the shadows, her words cutting through the noise of the operation. We can't keep pretending like we're one big happy family, Reeve, she said. I looked up from the terminal. Kale's face was hidden beneath her helm, but I could see the weight in her eyes. I knew what she was getting at. Tensions were rising, not just between the clans, but within the ranks of the resistance. They're fighting each other now, she continued. Veilborn, scrap clanners, choir, Fireborn. All of them are pushing their own agendas, thinking they have the right to decide how this war ends. We've got a bunch of broken tribes pretending they're a single army. I'm aware, I replied, leaning back in my chair, rubbing my temples. But that's not something we can fix in a day. It's something we need to fix now. Reeve, she shot back, her voice sharp with urgency. If we don't, we'll be dead before the next attack. I sighed, glancing over the tactical display. What do you suggest? Stop pretending like we're all on the same team, Kale said, her tone cold but calculated. This is going to take more than just words. It's going to take force. The strong have to lead, and if they can't, we need to let them fall. It's the only way we'll unite them. Her words stung, but I knew she wasn't wrong. The next few hours were spent in a series of difficult conversations with the leaders of each faction. I didn't enjoy it, but I knew what was at stake. As much as Kale's words cut deep, they had the ring of truth to them. The choir wanted to stay hidden, to fight without speaking, silent assassins lurking in the shadows. The scrap clanners, ever pragmatic, wanted weapons first, politics second. The Veilborn were too proud, and the Fireborn, despite their ferocity, were reluctant to sacrifice their honor in the face of war. I kept them in the same room, made them face each other, and let them argue. At first, it felt like a controlled chaos, but in the end, it brought a clarity that no single speech could have. The war council lasted until dawn, and by the time the sun rose over the shattered bastion, we had a plan. A loose one, an imperfect one, but it was a plan. The tribes would work together, not in unity, but in a temporary truce. Each faction would have its role, its responsibilities, and if they stepped out of line, well, I wasn't afraid to remind them of the lesson we'd all learned the hard way. Earth doesn't kneel. The first wave came early, 3 days ahead of schedule. I was still in the command center when the alarm sounded. Vern inbound, multiple dropships, combat forces, estimated numbers, 2,000. I didn't hesitate. Deploy all defenses. Don't wait for the official order. Fire at will. The battle was a blur. Vern shock troopers dropped from the sky, tearing into the outer defenses, only to be met with the first line of Fireborn and Scrap Clan artillery. Plasma blasts lit up the sky. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air. We were being overwhelmed, pushed back at every turn, but we fought. For each soldier that fell, another rose. For every inch the Vern gained, we tore it back. I fought alongside Dax, tearing through Vern ranks like they were paper. But there was something off about this fight, something unsettling. Mora had spotted it first. Reeve, I think we have a problem. I was cutting through a Vern shock trooper when she appeared at my side. What's going on? They're changing their tactics. They're not just attacking anymore. What are you talking about? Mora's eyes narrowed. They're searching. They're looking for something. What? We didn't have time to figure it out. More Vern forces landed, and we were back into the thick of it. But every time I thought we were pushing them back, the battlefield shifted. There was no unity in their attack anymore. No coordinated battle strategies. Just a relentless force, like they were trying to flush us out. And they were. That's when I noticed it. In the midst of the chaos, there was a single figure, darting between the Vern lines. A shadow that didn't belong. I couldn't place it at first, but it was moving with purpose. I reached out to Mora. Take the shot. She didn't need to ask. Her sniper rifle hummed, and in one fluid motion, the mystery figure dropped. But not dead. Not dead. The figure stood up, half human, half Vern. Its face was a twisted, distorted version of something I almost recognized. Its eyes glowed with a cold, calculating intelligence. A Vern infiltrator. And it was among us. I shoved through the line, heading toward the downed infiltrator. The others followed, but I was the first to reach him. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't alive either. The bastard had been hiding in plain sight, blending in with the survivors. Who the hell are you? I demanded, my blade inches from his throat. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. You still don't understand, do you? I tightened my grip on the hilt, ready to end him. This was never about Earth. This was always about you. He was silenced in a flash, his head cleaved clean off by Kale's blade. She looked down at him, her face unreadable. You were right. He was one of ours. I felt the ground beneath me shift, as though the weight of that revelation had just tilted the entire battlefield. We weren't just fighting a war against the Vern. We were fighting against ourselves. Later that night, as I sat alone in the war room, Kale's words replayed in my head. This was never about Earth. She was right. We'd been manipulated. The infiltrator was only a part of a larger strategy, one that would rip us apart from within. And now, There was no turning back. The war had become more than a fight for survival. It had become a fight for the soul of humanity. The air was thick with the taste of metal and betrayal. We couldn't afford to sit still for long. The battle against the Vern was far from over, but the battlefield had shifted. The real enemy wasn't the Vern at our gates, it was the shadows within our ranks, the traitors who had wormed their way into our hearts and minds. We had a name for them now, infiltrators. And I knew one thing: betrayal is like a virus. It spreads faster than the plague. We had caught him, the Vern infiltrator, half dead, his twisted face, those cold, glowing eyes. He'd said something before Kale silenced him, something that echoed in my mind like a curse. This was never about Earth. This was always about you. What did he mean? Why was he so calm, even in the face of death? There was no fear in his eyes, just this quiet, almost satisfied look, like he had already won. But we didn't have time to interrogate him. We had more pressing issues. The Vern were coming. They were regrouping. And we, the Resistance, were barely holding the line. The War Council was held in the remains of the command center, a half-collapsed bunker under what used to be the central plaza of the Bastion. The air was thick with tension, our faces pale from exhaustion and loss. Dax was already pacing, his cannon slung over his back. He was one of the few unshaken by the discovery of the infiltrator. Kale, on the other hand, was eerily quiet, her gaze distant, calculating. Mora was sharpening her rifle, but her eyes kept flicking to the door as if expecting someone to walk in. Someone who shouldn't be there. We can't keep pretending like this is just a battle of survival, Dax grunted, his voice hoarse from too much shouting on the battlefield. There's something else at play here, something bigger. I nodded, rubbing the back of my neck. I know. The infiltrator was part of something. Something we don't understand yet. Kale spoke then, her voice low but clear. It's not just about what's happening now, Reeve. It's about what's already happened. The Vern are no longer just a race of invaders. They're covert, subtle. They've infiltrated everything. Our military, our intelligence, our trust. Mora spoke next, her voice sharp, a tinge of bitterness in her tone. And now the traitors are among us. We've got a bigger problem than just fighting the Vern. We're fighting ourselves. That's when I understood. The infiltrator wasn't just an isolated threat. He was a symptom of something far worse. The Vern weren't just trying to take Earth. They were trying to turn us against ourselves. And they were succeeding. It wasn't long before Echo piped in, her voice calm but tinged with the familiar edge of concern. Her hologram appeared in the center of the room, flickering for a second before stabilizing. Reeve, I've run a full sweep of all encrypted communications in the Bastion network. There's something we're missing. There's a pattern emerging. Pattern? I asked, my heart quickening. What kind of pattern? I've been tracing subtle signals, encrypted subroutines embedded in our own systems. Someone has been feeding the Vern our strategies, our movements, everything. The infiltrator we found? He's a part of something much larger. A cell. A hidden network. I clenched my fists, frustration bubbling up. How did we not see it sooner? How long have they been here? Echo hesitated. I don't have the exact timeline, but the infiltrator was likely placed within our ranks a long time ago, possibly even before the invasion began. A heavy silence fell over the room. No one spoke. No one wanted to speak. The weight of Echo's words sank deep into all of us. We had been compromised, from the inside out. Dax's voice broke the silence, sharp and bitter. Then who do we trust? Reeve. Who's really with us? That was the question, wasn't it? Who could we trust? The lines had already blurred. The Resistance was no longer just a united front against the Vern. It was a fractured, paranoid group of people desperately clinging to the last shreds of hope. How long before we turned on each other? How long before the Vern didn't need to lift a finger to destroy us? Kale looked over at me, her eyes burning with the weight of 1,000 battles. We have to root them out, all of them. And if they're among us, we need to act fast. I nodded, my mind already working through the next steps. We'll take a head count. If we find anyone suspicious, we'll deal with them. But who will deal with them? Reeve? Mora's voice was cold, hard. How do we know you're not compromised? Her words were like a slap in the face. But I understood the question. Who wasn't compromised? We spent the next few hours combing through the remaining data, attempting to locate any anomalies, any hidden codes that might have been overlooked. Echo did most of the work, diving deep into encrypted channels, while the rest of us ran drills to prepare for the next wave of the Vern invasion. It wasn't long before the next bombshell dropped. Reeve, Echo said, her voice a warning. I found it, a signal, hidden deep within the command structure. It's a call to the Vern. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? A call? It's a beacon. Reeve. A distress signal. Set to trigger once certain conditions were met. It's set to go live in 3 hours. It's designed to call in reinforcements for the Vern. They've been waiting for this moment. I swallowed hard. This was it. We were out of time. The Vern were about to make their move, and we hadn't even started dealing with the traitors in our own ranks. We were about to be hit from 2 sides, internally and externally. I turned to Dax. Gather the troops. We have 3 hours to stop the signal. After that, we fight everyone. The next few hours were a blur of movement, chaos, and adrenaline. We stormed through the lower levels of the bastion, trying to track down the source of the distress signal. Echo guided us, pinpointing the location of the transmitter, but every corner we turned, every door we breached, only led to more questions. Who was behind this? Who was the real traitor? Finally, we found the signal. It was hidden deep within the heart of the bastion, beneath layers of decoy systems and false data. The room was cold, metallic, and eerily quiet. And there, at the center, was the device, a small, unassuming console connected to the bastion's mainframe. I knelt down, hands shaking as I reached for the console. Echo's voice was a constant presence in my mind. Disable the signal, Reeve. Now, I punched in the override codes. Nothing. I tried again and again. There's another level of encryption, Echo said, panic creeping into her tone. Someone designed this to keep us out. I slammed my fist on the console, frustration threatening to tear me apart. Who did this? Who are they? And then it hit me. It was Kale. I turned sharply, my heart hammering in my chest. Kale? It's you, isn't it? Her eyes flashed with something sharp and cold. What are you talking about? You're the one who's been feeding the Vern, aren't you? All along. You're the traitor. The room went dead silent. Every breath hung in the air. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Kale's face remained impassive, her armor cold and distant. You don't understand, Reeve. The Vern gave us a chance, a real chance to survive. They promised Earth would rise again, but only if we helped them. I shook my head. You've been working with them from the start? She didn't deny it. Her silence spoke louder than words ever could. The truth hit like a hammer. Kale wasn't just a traitor. She was the reason the Vern had infiltrated us. She was their inside agent, and we had been blind to it all along. I took a step back, feeling the weight of everything collapse around me. You've betrayed everything we've fought for. Kale's voice was low, resigned. We weren't meant to win, Reeve. We were meant to survive. The Vern offers something more than this dying world. Something better. I couldn't listen anymore. I drew my blade. The betrayal stung like an open wound, bleeding through every thought, every plan, every breath I took. Kale had been one of us. She had fought beside us. She had bled beside us. And now she was our enemy, a traitor who had never truly stood with us. I didn't have time to process the full weight of it. We were about to be wiped off the map. Echo's voice was insistent, cutting through the fog of confusion and anger. Reeve, the Vern fleet is incoming. Reinforcements. If the distress signal activates, the entire command structure will be compromised. Get us a way to disable it. I snapped, my voice harsh. Already working on it. But there's something more urgent you need to know. Kale has initiated the signal. She's activating it herself. The shock hit me harder than any blow could. She had done it on her own, without hesitation. Her loyalty had never been to us. She had always been with the Vern. Reeve, time's running out. We need to act now. I'll try to delay the transmission, but you need to stop Kale. She's in the central hub. I could feel the anger boiling in my veins. Betrayed by one of my own. Betrayed by someone I trusted. But there was no time for vengeance, not now. Dax, get the troops ready. We need to move. The command center was chaos. Screams, shouting, the clash of weapons. The air was thick with tension as the resistance prepared for the final stand. The Vern were coming. The signal was already active, and in less than an hour, our fate would be sealed. I pushed through the crowd, my eyes focused only on the task ahead. We needed to find Kale and stop the signal before the Vern reinforcements arrived. If we failed, there would be no hope left for humanity. The central hub was on the upper levels, deep within the heart of the bastion. The architecture was ancient Old Earth design. Thick walls, narrow corridors. Everything was built to withstand long-term conflict. The perfect place for a traitor to hide. Mora, Dax, and I moved together, each step heavier than the last. We were running out of time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. I'm tracing her signal now. Echo's voice crackled in my ear. Kale is in the command center, where the signal is being transmitted. But she's not alone. There's another presence, someone on her side. I clenched my jaw. Who? I don't know yet, but it's someone in the bastion. We made it to the central hub's entrance. The steel doors loomed in front of us, reinforced and locked down. The lights above flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that made the place feel more like a tomb than a command center. Kale, I muttered under my breath. She had to be here. This was where the final act would play out. We breached the door. Inside, the command center was dark. The only light came from the glowing terminals, flickering erratically, casting an eerie glow across the space. At the center, Kale stood with her back to us, her head slightly tilted as if waiting. She didn't move when we entered. "We know what you've done, Kale," I said, my voice cold and steady. She turned slowly, the sharp gleam of her visor reflecting the dim light. There was no emotion on her face, no remorse, only that cold, distant look that had haunted me since the moment she joined our ranks. "I thought you would have figured it out by now, Reeve," she said softly. "But it doesn't matter. The signal has been sent. The Vern will come, and Earth will be theirs. You sold us out," Dax spat, stepping forward, his fist clenched. "After everything we did together, after everything we fought for, you betrayed us." "I didn't betray anyone," she said, her voice steady and emotionless. "I just saw the truth. The Vern are not invaders, Reeve. They are saviors. Earth had its chance, and it failed. The Vern will offer us a future. You're just too blind to see it. Your future will be nothing but slavery." I shot back, stepping toward her. "You're helping destroy everything we fought for." She didn't react, didn't flinch. "I'm giving Earth a chance," she said quietly, her gaze unwavering. "A chance to survive. You want to die in a pit, fighting a battle that's already lost. You want to watch the world burn until there's nothing left. But I won't let that happen. Then you're the one who's already dead." I reached for my blade. Kale smiled faintly, her hands coming up slowly, like she was about to welcome the blow. But then the door slammed open behind us. A voice echoed through the command center, cutting through the tension like a knife. "You're too late." I spun around, my heart sinking as a figure stepped into the light. A man, tall, broad-shouldered. His armor gleamed in the flickering light. The emblem of the Vern burned into his chest plate. "Kale's ally. Commander Strawn," I muttered. Strawn was the one who had coordinated the early Vern assaults on Earth. He was a tactical genius, cold, calculating. I'd seen his face once, on a recording, before we had wiped out their initial scouting forces. "Reeve Strom," he said with a cruel smile, stepping forward. "It's been a while. You're the one who's been pulling the strings." I spat. "I should have known." He chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You're too predictable, Reeve. All of you were. You fought like rabid dogs, thinking you could survive. But you never understood the truth. Humanity had no place in the New Order. The Vern are the future. The future." Dax roared, stepping forward, his fist shaking with rage. "You're nothing but a conqueror." Strom's smile never wavered. "Conqueror? I'm a savior, just like Kale." I could feel the weight of the situation crashing down on me. The Vern had already won. Kale had already ensured our downfall, and now Strom was here to see it through. The signal had already been sent. The Vern reinforcements were on their way. It was over, but something inside me snapped. I didn't care anymore about what Kale had done. I didn't care about Strom's empty words. I didn't care about the battle ahead. I cared about one thing: fighting back. I raised my blade, my grip tight, and without thinking, I charged. The clash was brutal. Strom was faster than I had anticipated, his movements a blur of precision. He parried my first strike with ease, sending me crashing against a console. My head rang with the impact, but I didn't stop. I rolled to my feet, barely avoiding his counterattack, and slashed across his midsection. But his armor absorbed the blow, and he countered with a series of brutal strikes that sent me stumbling backward. Kale didn't move. She just stood there, watching. Her expression was unreadable. Dax and Mora rushed in to back me up. The three of us fought side by side, our movements in sync, but Strom was too powerful. Every time we got close, he managed to knock us back. "You're nothing compared to the Vern," Strom sneered, spinning away from another of my attacks. "You'll never defeat us. Not now. Not ever." "Maybe we don't need to defeat you," I growled, glancing at Mora. "We just need to survive." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and Echo's voice cracked through the chaos. "Reeve, I've overridden the system. The Vern reinforcements, they're delayed, but only for a few more minutes. You need to end this now." In that instant, something in me clicked. I lunged. Strom's eyes widened in surprise, but it was too late. My blade pierced through the weak point in his armor, striking deep. He gasped, his expression faltering for the first time. But I didn't stop. With one final twist, I pulled the blade free. Strom fell to his knees, blood spilling onto the floor. His eyes met mine one last time, full of hatred, before they went blank. I stood there, breathing heavily, the adrenaline fading from my body. The signal had been stopped, the Vern reinforcements delayed. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in what felt like forever, we had a chance.